night settles over Tucson, Arizona, where desert winds move quietly through sleeping neighborhoods beneath the Catalina Mountains. Street lights glow against still homes, and routine fades into silence. Somewhere between evening comfort and morning light, something changes, unnoticed at first, but impossible to ignore by sunrise. Let's uncover the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, what happened in Tucson. The Catalina Foothills sit along the northern edge of Tucson, where quiet residential streets wind beneath desert hills and towering saguaro cacti. The area is known for calm evenings, retirement living, and a sense of safety shaped by routine. Neighbors recognize familiar cars. Porch lights turn off early. Nights usually pass without interruption. For decades, it was a place defined by predictability. That sense of normalcy would change in the early hours of February 1st, 2026, when an 84-year-old woman disappeared from her longtime home under circumstances investigators would later describe as deeply unusual. Nancy Guthrie lived a life marked by family and stability. She was a mother of 3, a grandmother, and a longtime Tucson resident who had built her world around relationships rather than public attention. Although her daughter Savannah Guthrie was widely known as a co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, Nancy herself remained private, preferring quiet routines and familiar surroundings. Friends described her as warm, thoughtful, and independent. She attended church regularly, stayed connected with friends through phone calls and visits, and maintained an active social routine appropriate for her age. Even in her 80s, she valued independence and continued living alone in the home where she had raised her children. The house represented continuity, decades of memories contained within familiar walls. Her neighborhood reflected the same stability. Many residents were retirees who valued calm evenings and predictable days. Crime in the area was relatively rare, and neighbors often described the community as peaceful. Nancy did face medical challenges common to advanced age. She relied on medication and used a pacemaker monitored through a smartphone application, allowing her health to be remotely tracked. For her family, the technology provided reassurance that even when she was alone, she remained connected. Despite these vulnerabilities, nothing suggested danger. There were no known threats, disputes, or public concerns regarding her safety. In late 2025, Nancy briefly appeared during a holiday television segment filmed inside her home when Savannah shared memories of her childhood house with viewers. At the time, the moment felt ordinary, a glimpse into family history. Later, investigators would revisit that broadcast as they examined every possible detail connected to the residents. To neighbors, Nancy Guthrie was simply part of the community, a familiar face living a quiet life. No one imagined she would vanish without explanation. On January 31st, 2026, Nancy spent the evening with her daughter Annie Guthrie and son-in-law Tommaso Cioni. The gathering was relaxed and ordinary. Dinner, conversation, and games shared between family members. Nothing appeared unusual. At approximately 9:45 p.m., the evening came to an end. Tommaso drove Nancy home. A short and routine trip. Security data later showed the garage door opening at 9:48 p.m. and closing at 9:50 p.m. Investigators believe Nancy entered her home and prepared for bed as she normally would. For several hours afterward, everything appeared quiet. No alarms were triggered, no calls were made. But sometime after midnight, a sequence of events began unfolding, recorded not by witnesses but but by technology. During the early morning hours of February 1st, subtle digital signals began marking a timeline investigators would later analyze minute by minute. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's Google Nest doorbell camera was disconnected. The interruption immediately stood out to investigators because the device had previously functioned normally. Whether the disconnection was intentional or accidental became one of the earliest unanswered questions. Approximately 25 minutes later, motion detection software registered activity near the front entrance. Because Nancy did not maintain an active cloud subscription, video footage was not automatically preserved. However, investigators later recovered partial imagery through residual back-end system data, a rare technical recovery that provided a limited but significant glimpse into events during that time frame. The recovered imagery appeared to show a masked individual near the front door. Authorities later described the person as a male, approximately 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 10 inches tall, with an average build, dressed in dark clothing, and carrying a backpack identified as an Ozark Trail hiking pack, a commercially available item sold nationwide. Officials emphasized that while the individual was considered a suspect, no identity had been confirmed publicly. At 2:28 a.m., another digital event occurred. Data showed Nancy's pacemaker stopped syncing with the monitoring application connected to her phone. Investigators interpreted this moment as a possible indicator that the device had moved out of range or that normal connectivity had been abruptly interrupted. For detectives reconstructing the timeline, the sequence, camera disconnection, motion detection, and pacemaker signal loss suggested that something significant may have happened within a short window of time. Around 2:30 a.m., surveillance cameras located approximately 2.5 miles from Nancy's home captured footage of a vehicle traveling quickly along a nearby road. Authorities reviewed the footage, but did not confirm whether the vehicle was connected to the disappearance. The footage, nevertheless, became part of a growing digital puzzle. Hours later, concern emerged when Nancy failed to attend a scheduled virtual church service with friends, something family members described as completely out of character. At 11:56 a.m., relatives checked on her home after repeated attempts to reach her failed. Nancy Guthrie was gone. Her phone and Apple Watch remained inside the residence. Blood droplets were discovered on the front porch and were later confirmed to belong to Nancy. Investigators stated that the evidence indicated an incident may have occurred at or near the home during the early morning hours. At 12:03 p.m., the family called 911. Deputies from the Pima County Sheriff's Department arrived by 12:15 p.m., and the situation quickly shifted from a missing person inquiry to a suspected abduction investigation. Law enforcement response intensified rapidly. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, collected forensic evidence, and began assembling a detailed timeline using digital records, surveillance systems, and witness interviews. The FBI joined the investigation, bringing additional technical and investigative resources. Over time, authorities gathered nearly 10,000 hours of surveillance footage, reviewing vehicle movements and activity patterns throughout the Catalina Foothills and surrounding areas. Investigators also collected DNA evidence from Nancy's home and related search locations. Officials indicated that advanced forensic techniques, including genetic genealogy, were being considered if necessary, a method that has helped resolve previously unsolved cases across the United States.
Guthrie's purported abductor is demanding $6 million in Bitcoin and threatening to kill her if the demand is not met.
As public attention grew, unexpected developments complicated the investigation. Several media outlets received purported ransom communications demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin in exchange for Nancy's release. The messages referenced details about her home, raising questions about whether the sender possessed insider knowledge. However, authorities never confirmed the authenticity of the ransom demands. Investigators emphasized caution, noting that high-profile cases often attract false claims or opportunistic scams unrelated to the actual disappearance. Confirmed investigative facts established a limited but critical framework. Nancy was last seen entering her home late at night, marking the final verified moment before she vanished. Blood evidence indicated that an incident likely occurred at the residence. A masked individual appeared at her door during key hours, and surveillance analysis suggested possible vehicle movement nearby. Despite extensive investigative efforts, authorities released no confirmed proof of life. As the case developed, several theories were discussed neutrally by investigators. One possibility considered a targeted kidnapping motivated by ransom demands. Another suggested the communications may have been fraudulent and unrelated to the disappearance itself. Detectives also explored whether the incident involved someone familiar with the neighborhood or Nancy's routines, while continuing to examine alternative explanations supported by evolving evidence. Sheriff Chris Nanos repeatedly emphasized during public briefings that no suspects or persons of interest had been officially named, underscoring that the investigation remained active and open. Meanwhile, Tucson began to change. Media vehicles lined nearby streets. Reporters broadcast live updates beneath desert skies. True crime communities online analyzed timelines and surveillance details, drawing global attention to what had once been a quiet neighborhood. Yellow ribbons appeared along streets near Nancy's home. Flowers accumulated beside makeshift memorials. Residents who had never met Nancy stopped to leave messages of hope. The case had expanded beyond a local investigation. It had become a shared mystery watched across the country. As the days passed, the search for Nancy Guthrie extended beyond physical ground efforts. It became a psychological landscape, one shaped by hope, dread, public scrutiny, and the emotional strain that accompanies unresolved disappearance. The Catalina Foothills remained outwardly calm. Desert winds moved across quiet streets. Sunlight reflected off stucco walls and mountain stone, yet behind closed doors, neighbors locked their homes earlier. Porch lights remained on longer. Conversations shifted from routine pleasantries to whispered uncertainty. In high-profile cases, visibility becomes both an advantage and a burden. Nancy's daughter, Savannah Guthrie, is a nationally recognized journalist, a familiar face to millions of viewers each morning. Her public platform brought immediate and intense attention to the investigation. Law enforcement resources expanded. The FBI became directly involved. National media outlets followed every update, but visibility also introduced complications. Investigators cautioned that widespread publicity can generate misinformation, speculative theories, and opportunistic false leads. In Nancy's case, the circulation of alleged ransom messages intensified public focus, while simultaneously complicating the evidentiary landscape. Authorities confirmed that multiple media organizations received communications demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin. The messages referenced details about Nancy's home, which raised questions about authenticity. Yet, officials repeatedly stated that the legitimacy of those communications had not been verified. In modern investigations, ransom claims must be evaluated alongside the possibility of digital scams, cryptocurrency demands, anonymous email accounts, and artificial intelligence-generated messages have introduced new complexities into traditional criminal frameworks. Law enforcement emphasized that no confirmed proof of life had been released. For the Guthrie family, that absence of certainty created a specific kind of emotional strain known in psychology as ambiguous loss, a term coined by therapist Pauline Boss to describe the trauma of not knowing whether a loved one is alive or deceased. Ambiguous loss suspends families in emotional limbo. Unlike confirmed death, which carries grief and finality, or confirmed survival, which brings relief, ambiguous loss offers neither. It prevents closure, it interrupts mourning, it leaves hope and fear existing simultaneously. Families experiencing ambiguous loss often describe daily life as fragmented. Simple tasks feel heavier, sleep becomes irregular, conversations circle back to the same unanswered questions. What happened? Where is she? Is she still alive? Experts note that this form of uncertainty can be more psychologically destabilizing than confirmed tragedy because the mind has no fixed reality to process. Charlie Shunick, whose sister Mickey disappeared years earlier, described similar emotional turbulence. Families must organize search efforts, speak publicly, coordinate with law enforcement, and manage media attention, all while privately enduring shock and exhaustion. There is no handbook. Advocates recommend several strategies that research has shown can increase both investigative effectiveness and family resilience. Maintaining consistent communication with law enforcement, preserving accurate timelines and documentation, encouraging community engagement, utilizing media exposure strategically, establishing support networks. Organizations such as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and other advocacy groups often guide families through search logistics, fundraising coordination, and public messaging. These structured efforts provide a sense of agency in an otherwise uncontrollable situation. Mounting a sustained search campaign can carry a significant financial strain. Expenses may include reward funds, digital outreach, travel, private search teams, and advanced forensic testing. In some cases across the country, families have spent tens of thousands of dollars during prolonged investigations. For the Guthrie family, rewards totaling over $1 million were announced in hopes of encouraging actionable information. Meanwhile, investigators continued reviewing surveillance footage, thousands of hours, analyzing vehicle movements, neighborhood patterns, and digital timestamps. Detectives evaluated every known contact, routine service provider, and documented visitor associated with the area. Sheriff Chris Nanos reiterated publicly that no suspects or persons of interest had been officially named, emphasizing the importance of protecting investigative integrity while evidence was processed. The masked individual captured in partial footage remained unidentified. The vehicle recorded miles away remained unconfirmed. The ransom communications remained unverified, and Nancy Guthrie remained missing. As weeks pass in unresolved cases, a subtle shift often occurs in public attention. Headlines become shorter, broadcast segments become less frequent. Yet for families, time does not soften uncertainty. It often magnifies it. Each sunrise without resolution deepens questions. Each quiet night echoes louder. Across Tucson, some residents began lighting candles near their windows. Yellow ribbons remained tied to trees and mailbox posts. Flowers at the edge of the Guthrie property were replaced as older bouquets faded in the desert heat. Grief counselors explain that rituals, even small ones, help communities express solidarity without demanding answers. Lighting a candle, keeping a journal, maintaining a remembrance space. These acts acknowledge absence without accepting finality. Families often experience guilt during long investigations. Moments of laughter feel inappropriate. Sleep feels undeserved. Routine life continues, but emotionally, it feels suspended. Psychologists recommend holding exploring two possibilities simultaneously, maintaining hope while preparing emotionally for uncertainty. This dual mindset is not a contradiction. It is survival. In Nancy's case, confirmed investigative facts remain limited but significant. She was last seen entering her home late at night. Blood evidence indicated an incident occurred at the residence. A masked individual appeared at her door during critical hours. Surveillance data suggested possible vehicle movement nearby. No confirmed proof of life has been released. Theories continue to be examined cautiously. A targeted kidnapping motivated by ransom. A fraudulent ransom attempt unrelated to the disappearance. A crime involving someone familiar with the neighborhood. Alternative explanations still under review. At this stage, authorities maintain that no single explanation has been confirmed. The investigation remains active, evolving as evidence is processed and new leads are assessed. For Savannah Guthrie and her siblings, the public role has reversed. A journalist accustomed to asking difficult questions now waits for answers about her own family. In interviews and recorded appeals, the tone remains steady but emotional. A balance between strength and vulnerability. The message is consistent. Bring Nancy home. The desert sky over Tucson continues its cycle. Pale sunrise, bright afternoon, long twilight, quiet night. The home where Nancy lived still stands. The garage door that closed at 9:50 p.m. that evening remains intact. Technology recorded fragments. Investigators followed digital traces. But the central question remains unchanged. What happened in the hours between routine and silence? What occurred after the camera disconnected? And who knows more than they have said? What if the answer to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance exists within footage or memories not yet fully understood? And what if someone, somewhere, holds the final detail that could shift this investigation from uncertainty to clarity? Until that detail emerges, the story remains open, not frozen, not forgotten, waiting. Time moves forward, but unanswered questions remain where certainty should be. In Tucson, a home still stands waiting, and a family continues to hope for the moment when silence is replaced by truth. Until that day comes, Nancy Guthrie's story remains unfinished, carried by memory, compassion, and the refusal to stop searching. This is Vanished Stories, where the missing are never forgotten.